Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Muslim Matters podcast, where we discuss everything under the sun that affects Muslims, such as faith, local and global politics, social media, sex education, civil rights, and family matters, all coming from a traditional Orthodox perspective. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us online on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram on our handle, Muslim Matters, and check out our site daily at muslimmatters.org.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to Muslim Matters podcast, Man2Man. This is where we bring you guests to speak about different issues impacting our deen, our families, and our communities. And we benefit from the experiences and stories of Muslim men. These are fathers, husbands, brothers, sons, uncles, and friends. Our guest today is one I'm really excited about. He is currently the founder and one of the main heads of the Hamd Institute in Houston, Texas. I have with us Imam Brother Hamzah Ghiah. Hamzah is a University of Houston alumni. He had a master's in accounting. He has extensive experience as a teacher and youth director in the Muslim community. He actually served as an Imam and Qur'an teacher for over a decade right here in Houston. He memorized the Qur'an at the age of 9 at Madrasa Islamiyya under Qari Hashim, and he completed his Ijaza with Sheikh Uthman Khan and Sheikh Sayyid Al-Abdullah. Most recently, he served as the Dean of Student Affairs at Brighter Horizons Academy, and he was the Imam at the Klein Islamic Center, and currently he is the Director at the Hamd Institute in Houston, where he focuses on Quranic memorization and Islamic studies. Along with being a teacher, Hafiz Hamzah works with different MSAs at the college and high school level with different communities, and he is a motivational speaker. He also focuses on tarbiyah with the youth from all over the city and different parts of the state. Welcome to the show, Imam Hamzah.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, bro. It's really, really good to have you. So much to talk about. I know this is actually our first show we're recording a couple weeks after Ramadan ended. And I know I'd been trying to get you on for a while now. Recently, I was with my family and we went to a program that was organized by Hamd Institute. I actually didn't run into you, but I believe you guys had Sheikh Abdullah Duru there. And I got to meet a lot of your students and some of the brothers and sisters from the community. And my kids all had a great time, just really well-organized program and an engaging community. I wanted to, before we get into Hamd and some of the stuff you're currently doing, I thought this could be a great episode for listeners just to hear about you, your story, obviously now currently working with Hamd Institute and really focus on hifth and different tarbiyah programs with the youth. You know, you're a locally kind of born and raised kid and a great kind of a career path through your Islamic work, also touched on corporate. And I think this could be a chance for us first to get to know a little bit about that. So let me start, Hamzah, just again, welcome you to the show. And I was wondering if first you could talk about, I remember you even now it feels like it's been, you know, and I could be a little off here, but at least maybe 10, 15 years, maybe more, when you were active with Masjid Hamzah in Southwest Houston, one of our big masajid, and you were always kind of involved in Quranic studies, teaching, and community youth programs. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you get involved with Masjid Hamzah? How old were you those years? And what was your role when you were doing that? I feel like this is when you were a bit younger, before you even got into corporate. How did that happen? How did that idea come to be? And what were you doing there?
So actually, my teaching career started at Bear Creek. I was born and raised in Bear Creek. I taught there as a teacher assistant for a few years. And then my Qur'an was not as strong as I think my teachers would have liked it for it to be. So at Bear Creek, they had about 4 people leading Taraweeh, a lot of Hufaz in the community. At that time, Qari Dilawar Shah, Hafiz Hamzah and Mufti Salim were involved. So because of my Qur'an, I had an opportunity to lead Taraweeh at Masjid Hamzah, where I would have gotten a little bit more raka'ahs, some more exposure in terms of getting to recite more Qur'an. I don't think they cared about how big or how small the masjid was. I just, at that time, it happened to be Masjid Hamzah. So I went there my first year and I led with a classmate of mine, Hafiz Anis. And as we were in Ramadan, they asked, what do you do usually? And I said, well, I used to teach at Bear Creek. And now that I'm moving towards, closer to Masjid Hamzah, what do you guys do over here? And they said, well, we're looking for a teacher. And so we started talking and I basically started teaching there. I had about 6 or 7 students in my first class. This was back in 2009. So it's been almost 15 years from now. 2008, 2009. So I started teaching just, basic alif bata. I had a few students who were memorizing Qur'an, like Juz Amma, and that's where the journey started. And I was there at Masjid Hamza till 2018, and then I moved to Tomball. So at Masjid Hamza, my role was few. I started off with a Quran teacher, then they kind of added a youth director position. They saw that the youth were coming. They were saying maybe outside of Quran you can do some youth halaqas. So we used to do basic halaqas, play some basketball, family nights, so on and so forth. I graduated high school. I was at Masjid Hamza. Then I graduated college. I was still at Masjid Hamza, and I started working corporate, and I was at Masjid Hamza.
So let me ask you this question. I'm going to stop you for a second. So when you had first starting working Masjid Hamza, were you a college student? Was it even before that?
I was a senior in high school.
So in a way, this was kind of like your student job. Like, alhamdulillah, you're getting to do community work on the side. You're getting to do Quranic teaching and youth programs. But essentially, you were a student. So the same way a student might work at the pharmacy or work at a restaurant, alhamdulillah, you got to work at the masjid. Would that be accurate?
That's about it. That's how it started.
So then you take your corporate job, and I know obviously being in Houston, a lot of us living here, we wind up working somewhere in the energy or in oil and gas or chemicals. So you took the job at Chevron, and you continued for a little while after that to be at the masjid?
Yeah. So ironically, subhanallah, I interviewed at maybe 50 plus places, and I graduated as an accountant. I did my master's in accounting. Every place that I would go, and they would say, well, you would have to travel 20%, 30% of the time. And although I was like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever, whatever you get at that point when you're about to graduate. Chevron was actually one of the last places I interviewed at. And subhanAllah, like, I think Allah just had a plan, because it was 20 minutes away from Masjid Hamza. It was, you didn't have to travel basically at all. I think I traveled once in my 5 years over there for like 2 days. I think it was just a way, like, Allah just kind of put that in my way to kind of get my experience. And so I used to go into work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would get off at 4, and I would drive straight to Masjid Hamza, eat some food, and at 5 o'clock class would continue to start. So I taught my entire time. I was at corporate. I was teaching at Masjid Hamza.
Okay, great. And one of the, not to go on a tangent for this show, but for brothers and sisters listening, I always talk to people, including those who are involved in some of the imam organizations, or they work with some of the imam groups around the country. We are not the Muslim community in North America, and whether this is good or bad, we are not getting the number of visas from foreign imams that we once were, and that's another argument. And if we should be importing tons of foreign imams here, or we should be producing and raising homegrown imams, kind of like, what groups like Man2Man Institute and many other seminaries are able to do nowadays. But I do hope people listening, or, there could be other people in communities who, there might be somebody who, maybe they memorize Quran, or maybe they have some talent in Quran or youth programs, and get involved in your masjid. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. If there's an opportunity, see if you can take it as a part-time job. See if you can help. If you're volunteering, you're volunteering. But even if there was an opportunity paid position, I think a lot of us, when we think about part-time student work, we probably look everywhere except in the masjid. But I really kind of like that you did that. So for a while, you do the 9 to 5 corporate. Obviously, you're at Chevron, and now Hamza, correct me, you were in Chevron in accounting and finance, right?
Yes, correct. I was there for about 5.5 years.
Okay, 5.5 years. With that, I'm going to fast forward a little bit from the corp. We can come back and definitely touch on it, but I want to fast forward to what you're doing today with the Man2Man Institute firstly. And I want you to tell us a little bit about the Man2Man Institute. But what I'll tee up for you as well is I've heard from folks, and I haven't even had a chance to talk to you about this in detail, so we're almost really doing this on the podcast. I understand that with the Man2Man Institute, the focus is obviously the Quranic teaching, Quranic learning, and also Islamic studies. But there's some sort of collaboration with the Mifta Institute and the Wahid brothers. You want to talk a little bit about that? Tell our audience a little bit about Man2Man Institute firstly, and maybe about the collaboration or the partnership.
Yeah, most definitely. So, alhamdulillah, Ham started last year, July 2022. After corporate, after having kids, obviously, like this whole day work, 16 hours a day, 17 hours a day, it was getting a lot. So I had an opportunity to go to Northside. I worked there for 3 years. My contract was for 3 years. Alhamdulillah, it ended. And I just saw a little bit more that I could do and I had a vision for. And that was to have a place that people or my students could call home, like a second home. And not typically a masjid. I mean, I was open to for it to be in a masjid, but basically a place where people can come, they can study, they can make friends, they can play some ball, so on and so forth. So Ham came about an idea. I had about 15 students who were already committed. They said, listen, we think that we can support, coming and learning Quran. We would like to do it at a higher level. So we started Hamd, and Mufti Abdul Wahab, I've been close to him since they started Miftah. So they would actually come visit Houston when I was at Masjid Hamzah. So they would come and do programs with me at Masjid Hamzah. We took Hajj groups together for a few years. We've been taking Umrah groups together for almost 7, 8 years. And so they were actually thinking about starting one of their branches for Alimiya studies in Texas. They were looking for some people that they could kind of have the same mindset as. So when we spoke about it, we kind of just kicked off because they were doing this because they have a lot of students from Texas, and now they're kind of outgrown their place. They can only accept a few people every year. They can't accept as many. They get almost 300, 400 applicants, and they can only accept like 20 to 30 every year. So this idea of a collaboration came about, that they have some students who are graduating who are born in Houston. Obviously, memorizing Quran is a first step, and then learning Arabic and learning some hadith and fiqh is like the second step. So it was more like a funnel. So we kind of talked about some small details here and there. And alhamdulillah, they spoke about it, we spoke about it. And we just found
Does the partnership, does it eventually push them into like a Dars Nizami program, or like one of the like Darul Uloom style programs?
they could go to it. They could go to a program afterwards. So we right now our plan is to have students study for 3 years, and inshallah after 3 years they will be well equipped to go anywhere. Ideally, like if they wanted to follow the same system, because our curriculum is from Michigan Islamic Institute, from Miftah. They could go to Miftah for year 4, 5, and 6 and 7, or they could go to Qalam, or they could go to Darul Uloom, they could go to Azhar, they could go to Medina University. It's kind of open for them. Obviously, we don't tell them where to go, but ideally, like the Miftah scholars, they come every month to come and they sit with the students and they have these one-on-ones and they have the tarbiyah sessions. So ideally, if they would want to go there to continue with the same teachers, they could, but it's open. Like they can do whatever they would like after that.
So let me ask you this question. I've actually seen a lot of the Mifta programs and conferences online. I've not had the pleasure of meeting the Wahid brothers yet, but you see around the country a lot of imams and sheikhs and Islamic activists. They'll work with different organizations. They'll do partnerships, and you see a lot of people kind of avoid it. They kind of, for whatever reason, they're like, I'd rather go it alone. I avoid partnerships. They can sometimes be complicated. What was it for yourself, obviously, and you have a reputation, and alhamdulillah, you've done good work in Houston for a long time, where the community knows you and respects you. And obviously, the Wahid brothers seem to have a good platform, and they are clearly respected and have built a following. What was it that made you guys say, hey, this partnership makes sense, we want to work with each other? Because obviously they must have taken a vision both by you and by them to have this partnership. I like the idea of seeing some of these partnerships. What was it that pushed you guys and made it make sense?
So two things. Number one was we both had the same mindset. Like our goal was to get students to come learn their religion in a beautiful, fun environment where they can, become huffaz, become strong huffaz, become scholars. And number two is, why reinvent the wheel, and why not put people where they're good at? So I may not be the best Arabic teacher, but I would say that I'm pretty decent when it comes to Quran teaching. And they had the Arabic and the Islamic studies down. So we were like, instead of them starting, us starting, we're all over the place, we have a good relationship. Why not work together and build off that synergy? And Allah puts barakah when you work together. And alhamdulillah, so far, it's been almost a year, and we've seen nothing but blessings, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, that have come from this. Their visitations, us going there to visit them, benefiting, the students benefiting. So actually, we sent about 15 high school students for their Sira intensive in December that they have every year. And subhanAllah, it was beautiful. They took care of the students. They stayed at the boarding or the madrasa over there. They really enjoyed it. They enjoyed the scholarship. They enjoyed the company. They benefited a lot. We sent one of our teachers with them, so they don't mess around or anything. But it was a good event that brought people closer to Allah. And from that group of students who went, I think a few of them joined their online programs and a few of them joined the full-time Hifz program at Hamd. So it's a benefit for everyone where we get to teach more students because of this collaboration and people are getting closer to Allah.
MashaAllah, no, absolutely. So with that, I'll segue into this. You, alhamdulillah, at least, working in this obviously fulfilling work for you around Quranic teaching and memorization, you've probably seen now 10, 15 years of batches of Hifz students who memorized or who are memorizing, who are learning. They come out starting from the letters and introductions to Tajweed. I want to ask you, what makes this work fulfilling to you? What is it? You look at the repetitive nature where you probably have students now that from 10 years ago that have moved on, they're doing something else. And then you have those new kids who show up and mom and dad are like, hey, hey, Imam Hamzah Ghiah, this is our son, this is our daughter or kid. And, they're just starting with like the Nurani Qaida or something like that. And what is it that makes this fulfilling? What makes you going? And it's like, this is really what I want to be doing.
This actually teaching became my passion maybe about like 10 years ago. Obviously, as a high school kid, when you're in college, it's just like a side job, right? But I still remember the first time my student finished his Qur'an. It was May 5th, 2005, I believe, or 2007. But it was just subhanAllah, like a kid who knows like nothing. They come to you, they don't even know Alif Bata. And you're able to take them from the beginning till the end. And the whole process is just so subhanAllah, it's so fulfilling to see the student struggle, to see the student be happy, celebrate small victories, 1 juz, 5 juz, 10 juz. And this was the work, I personally believe I have the best job. Like I love doing it. I love teaching. And every day it's a new day. It's kind of my motivation to get up. Like, okay, inshallah, who's going to finish it just today? These kids are going to move on today. So it's really fulfilling to see students come from the beginning and then finish. But also, I think the different aspect that I like to push on is the tarbiyah aspect, is the aspect of not just coming and memorizing Quran, but having a relationship with the place that you studied, with the teachers that you studied, with the classmates that you studied with. Recently one of my students, he got married about 3 years ago. And it was just nice to see so many of his classmates travel just for his wedding. And it showed something that we did along the lines that worked because they were a group. Maybe you're not part of it, but they became a group. And I think with that group comes, if any student is going through a hardship, unfortunately, a few years ago, one of my students, he had a stillborn baby. But just to see the entire class body that he messaged in the morning that, hey, unfortunately this happened, we have janazah today, just to see everyone stop, drop and roll and be there for him, it's just so fulfilling to know that people are there for each other and you were part of that journey. So that's kind of my motivation to continue to do this.
Wow, it almost seems like that culture of the students of Quran and the students that are in the Hifz programs, it becomes like a family, like a brotherhood and sisterhood together. No, that definitely makes sense. I know years ago I used to see a lot of the same phenomenon and same mindset in the students of the Maghrib Institute, or you have other institutes and seminaries. I'm sure the same sort of mindset. Let me transition to ask you, and there's kind of several points to unpack on this one, but parents who are listening to you today, parents, moms and dads listening to your interview, or even grandparents or older siblings, people always ask, is there a right age or a right time to start the Hifz? And then there's that part of it, which I'd like you to answer, but then also how do you do it? We have some parents who can be a little overbearing and not to say that's a bad thing. Obviously, every Muslim parent wants their child to learn and memorize the Quran, but there's a difference between memorizing, a little bit of, memorizing Juz Amma or something, and whereas dedicating yourself to memorizing the whole Quran. And sometimes it's the parents pushing and driving that more so than the child, or the child might, it may even be something the child's not ready for, or they're but I wanted to ask you to comment on this. And I know we probably couldn't have a one size fits all, and every kid is different, every teacher is different. But when people come to you, I'm sure you get this question asked all the time: is there a right age? Is there a right way? Should you consult the kid, or when they're really young, can the parent just kind of push it? So let me ask you, if a parent was to ask you, what is the right time to start the HIF programs and how should you go about it? What would you tell them?
The other day I read a quote by Imam Shafi rahimahullah, and it said, if you want to rectify your heart or want to see betterment in your children or companion or whoever it is for that matter, then direct them to places where the Qur'an is recited and direct them to be in the company of the Qur'an. Allah will then cause them to become better, whether they are willing to it or not. And this quote stuck with me because I feel like you mentioned, there's no proper age, right? Every kid is different. But if you had the choice, I would say second to third grade is a very good time to start. Ideally, when a child is younger, memorizing Quran is a lot easier. They have less distractions. They're not old enough where they're committing sins. They're just they're children. They're pure. It is a little bit hard and challenging, but I definitely think that it's doable at that age. And I think when you start at that age, you're setting the foundation very well for your child. And not to say that the tarbiyah aspect, and I think that's where, we were talking about it earlier, and you, as you mentioned, you came with your children, to Hamd. I think that's one of our goals is that we want to love Quran. So we don't want kids we want kids to say that what I'm proud of where I am studying Quran and I'm proud of me memorizing Quran. And so our goal as teachers is not only to teach them makharij and tajweed and read nicely, but it's for them to feel like they belong. And so, you know, a lot of people they would say, well, different punishments of Quran, we can agree to disagree, and I think a lot of people disagree with back in the day and how it happened. But for me, some of one way that I tell students is listen, if you can't keep up, or if I have to continuously talk to you about your behavior, I may have to suspend you for a few days. And that's like a punishment for them. Like they're so upset about not being able to be there with their brothers or their friends, so on and so forth. So I think, second, third grade is a good time to start when they're young. But I also have students right now who are in high school and college. They never got a chance to memorize before. And then they came part time and they liked it. And now they want to take the step. So for them, ahlan wa sahlan, it might be a little bit more challenging, but it's definitely doable. And I have one student right now, the first 6 months when he started at Hamd, he actually didn't want to memorize the Quran. I don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in his heart, but subhanAllah, he started in January and now he's memorizing 4 pages a day. And you're like, wow, and he just, all the kids are now running after him, hey, what do you do at home? And he's like, I just sit down and I memorize and I do 4 pages a day, And so we have this system where students have to come recite their just test to me before they move on. So every other week he's in line. He's like, I'm ready. I'm going to just test. So it's nice to see these things, that come out of it. So every kid is different at the end of the day. But I definitely believe that the best gift a parent can give to their child is for them to learn the Quran.
No, for sure. And with that, your comment that every kid is different. How much are you able to customize things, like even children's mental capacity, intellectual capacity from one kid to another is different? I hear stories about some kids will memorize a page a day, or maybe even multiple pages a day, and then there's some kids maybe they'll do, I don't know, 3 ayahs or whatever. And do you customize all that? Do you look at the kid? Do you look at the situation? Or do you guys have kind of a more cookie cutter approach where there's a full-time pace and then there's a part-time pace? How do you guys deal with stuff like that?
Part-time gives you part-time results. Full-time gives you full-time results. So when a child comes full-time, obviously we have expectations, but every child is treated differently based on what they're capable of doing. So some kids do memorize 1 page, some kids do 1.5, some kids do half. Every child is different. The idea is that as they're moving with their memorization, their revision stays strong. So as long as their revision is strong and they're putting in effort. So we give grades to our students. because of report cards and whatnot, and want to make sure that they have everything, with them when they leave. So Quran is actually a subject that we grade them. We don't grade them on the end result. We grade them on the efforts that they made in class. So if a child is reading the entire time, and for example, Surah Nisa, which is a very hard surah for Hafaz, if they struggle on it, it's okay. It's no problem. As long as you're putting in the effort. Yeah, if a child's not putting in the effort, then we have like, okay, we have to meet with the parents and discuss like, hey, what strategic ways can we take to get them to the next level? So, and this is one difference between learning Quran and any other subject that I think a lot of people don't understand is that when you have math, science, English, or even Islamic studies or Arabic, you can have 50 to 60 students in one classroom. If you go into a college, you can have 300 students in one classroom and everyone studies the same thing. For Quran, you can have more than 12 to 15 students in one classroom because every child is reciting something different. You can't come tell them to recite it together. You'll never know if they know their it has to be customized, and the program has to be customized for each child. And I think that's the uniqueness, or that's one of the challenges that Quran schools face, is that you can't have more than a certain number of students per class. So a lot of factors go beyond that. The child to teacher ratio, the cost per child, so on and so forth. But once you get into a system, Allah puts barakah in it from different ways, alhamdulillah.
And for sure Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts barakah in it. But I wanted to ask you about a practical thing too. Now, I'm always amazed by the youth of today. I feel like they live in such a more challenging and even in some ways difficult world than certainly my generation did. I'm 43 now, but I just look at the amount of distractions and whether it's technology or all the different stuff that's available now. As teachers, as a director of the Hamd Institute, people who are helping with the Hifz program, how much do you deal with your students and their mental preparation? Like, look, yes, you're young, but you know what? You can't do 5 hours of video games on Saturday. You can't every day be on Discord. You can't, sometimes you're going to have fun. You want to unwind a little bit. You want to, maybe play some sports or even watch something with your friends or family, but you can't do it for hours and hours because, when you're doing other stuff, that's time away from the Hifz or it's time away from the revision. And not to say that it could never happen, but at the same time, limiting those distractions and having that focused mindset. How much of your time and the Hifz teachers focus on that mental prep?
One of the greatest punishments for students is when you take away their phones. It's like the world is ending. It's like the world is ending for them. You take away their iPad, you take away their phone, and subhanAllah, the next day, it doesn't matter how many pages you give them, magically they're able to do it when they don't have those devices. So we actually we try to encourage, students, especially the older ones, that, maybe stay off your social media or give yourself a time limit on it. But we actually, when we have our town halls with our parents, we actually encourage parents, especially for full-time kids, to put them in some type of sports activity outside of school. So whether that's swimming, basketball, boxing, squash, racquetball, tennis, whatever it is, because that helps a child, get rid of all that energy that they need to get rid of. It helps them focus again. They're with the coach, they're training, their mindset gets better. Because honestly, TV and social media is a very, very big distraction. And I can see the students who I taught at Masjid Hamza when I was in college, and they didn't have phones or they had those prepaid phones. And I see, students now, they'll just take out their phone and start using it. And it's like, you don't need your phone in class. If something was to happen, your parents would call me and I can tell you that, hey, you need to leave. But, inshallah, nothing will happen. You just need to focus. So we do face a lot of challenges. And I always tell parents that sports activities is good, and limiting, watching TV and video games is a must for a student to fully function. So I would tell them that during the week, maybe you don't do it at all. And then maybe on the weekend, if they really want to play video games with their friends or, stream online or whatever, they can probably do some of that on the weekend. But during the week, they should just focus on doing other activities, playing outside, so on and so forth.
No, absolutely, totally agree with you on that. On managing the distraction and the reward versus punishment. Let me ask you a question, and I know this from alhamdulillah having over the years friendship with you and several of our other imams and shuyukh in town. I kind of hear, I see some of the challenges for all you brothers who work in this space. And one of the challenges, to be honest, is sometimes dealing with the parents. Now, I know we have amazing parents in the Muslim community, and then you'll always have some parents where you're like, man, these, it can be a little more difficult or a little more challenging. Let's just be nice on the podcast and dealing. Let me ask you, as someone who's a director at Hamd Institute, when it comes to Hifdh al-Quran specifically, about memorization program, what is that ideal parent? And what type of parents can be a little bit too overbearing or difficult, whether it means difficult for their own children or difficult with the teachers sometimes as well. Maybe sometimes they don't realize, but maybe they hurt the process. Maybe they hurt their child. Maybe they hinder the progress in the program. So I don't know, maybe if you could comment a little bit, like as a director, you've seen this now 10, 15 years. What are the type of parents, if you could describe, that you really appreciate and you're like, man, this is the type of parent who really helps us get success? And then what are the type of qualities you see where you're like, man, this is a little more difficult, this is a little harder to deal with?
Yeah, so obviously, once you have a number of students, right, every parent wants their child to do the best, which obviously we would want the same for our children. But let me put it this way: you have to trust the process in hifz. You can't rush. You can't just skip. You can't just cut corners, especially when it comes to the Quran. So when a child is, for example, in fifth grade and they're learning multiplication or division, you don't teach them algebra 1. And you don't go at home and on their free time, you say, you know what, let's open up an algebra book and work on our algebra. You trust the process of the school. You trust the process of the teachers that are teaching the school. And if you have questions, you can always ask. Similarly to Hifz, I think a lot of parents, like if a teacher was to stop the lesson and say, you know what, we need to revise, they'll have the students memorize extra lesson at home. And they'll cut corners by saying, it's okay, you can practice at school, but let's just keep moving forward. Or if they put like a number of years, they say, okay, 1 year, 2 years, you have to finish because you're getting behind. My advice, and actually, I actually believe it. Anyone who goes towards the Quran, Allah's not going to make them not smart in other subjects. Allah's not going to take away their dunya from them because they're running towards Allah. Right? The Prophet ﷺ tells us if you walk towards Allah, Allah runs towards you. And so this process is so beautiful that I would tell parents, enjoy it. Your child is reading Quran for 4 to 5 hours a day. The fact that Allah is blessing you with your job and the way, or your business, and you're making money and you're able to do things that maybe you weren't able to do before, it's because your child is reading Quran for so many hours of the day. So trust the process. And this process has been coming all the way from the time of the companions. Abu Darda, may Allah be pleased with him, he started kind of this halaqah thing of Quran learning and having students come and read to a teacher and, in a group setting, so on and so forth. And so from that time to now, there's no shortcuts. We all went through the same process. And because we went through the same process, today, we're able to recite Quran well. We trusted our teachers, and our parents. They did it very well. They did a very good job. That's number one. Number two is, I think in this generation, at least, a lot of parents, they'll undermine the teacher, especially in front of the child, and I think that's not a good relationship to have. There's always respect for your teacher. You may disagree, and it's okay to disagree, but having that conversation on the side puts, allowing you and the teacher to communicate well, so that your child could get the best. I always tell parents that out of 100%, it's 40% teacher, 40% parent, and 20% child. You have to trust the teacher. You have to trust the process. There's no shortcuts in this. So once you trust the process, and those who have trust the process, they've seen the results of it. They see their child finishing the Quran 3 years or 4 years or even 5 years. And it's okay. And that's one unique thing that, alhamdulillah, that we're doing at Hamd is we're keeping up with their academics. Like when I was in madrasa, when I studied, I didn't do any academics. I had a tutor that would come maybe on the weekends or something just to go over some English reading or math. But now we're giving them all the subjects. We're giving them a proper teacher who's certified. We're giving them, their academics. Yeah, it's a little bit, it's not 100%. It's not like an elite school of academics, but it's enough for them not to get behind. And then the best parent that I've seen is when they come and they say, you know what, you guide us, you tell us what we need to do and where we need to intervene. And if we're not doing our job, you let us know. And those students usually progress the fastest and they do the best. So all in all, this whole journey is a process and you have to trust that process. If you trust it, just like you do, you go through first, second, third, fourth, elementary, middle, high school, then you go to college, you have to do your SATs in 10th, 11th grade. There's a process that's there. Similarly, Quran has a process too. You just have to trust it, inshallah, and you'll see the results.
Hamza, let me ask you on that. And, I know this for some people, this could be an uncomfortable conversation. Do you ever feel that parents or families with more resources, it kind of gives them more favorable conditions to prepare their children for hifz than Islamic studies? Like essentially, if you come from a blue collar family, working class, both parents are working, a lot of the focus is on, how am I going to pay the bills? Maybe dad works a second job. Maybe mom's busy on the weekends. Versus those families that are more wealthy, they're comfortable. Money's not an issue. They can easily, get the kids here and there where they need to go or provide whatever fees or costs or travel. Do you ever feel that there is a little bit of a disparity in that? Or if not, are there ways, to work around those sort of situations?
I have never seen it to be an hinder in someone's learning capabilities of Quran. I think if parents have a mindset that, hey, I want my child to memorize the Quran, I want my child to get the best tarbiyah, and they trust that process. I'm telling you, Brother Irtiza, that Allah puts blessings in their work and, in their wealth and their rizq, and the students do very well. Yes, I think one of the things you could say is that maybe someone doesn't have the capabilities to pay for a full-time HIFZ program or a part-time HIFZ program, but for that, at Hamd and at many other schools that I've taught at before, Masjid Hamza, BHA, wherever, I think everyone has been really accommodating to those parents and saying, you know what, we'll find you a sponsor, we'll find someone to help you guys out, so that your child can go on this journey. And obviously that sometimes that brings some unwanted feelings, and that I have to rely on someone else or I have to rely on donations. But know that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has given your child a gift, and if you just trust the process, inshallah, maybe after your child becomes hafiz and Allah gives you more, you can then sponsor a child. You can then help out someone that was less fortunate. But I think in Houston especially, and I think not even Houston. I think in America, I've seen a lot of places where they don't. I don't think fees is a way to stop a child from coming. I think people make it work if that child is committed to memorizing the Quran or learning Arabic or becoming a scholar.
No, certainly very generous communities. And, one thing I remember when coming out to the program a few weeks ago over at the Bear Creek Islamic Center with the Hamd Institute, I also noticed it was, most of Houston is diverse. Houston is one of probably the most diverse cities in North America. But your community as well was really diverse. I felt like, you had obviously a huge mix of Desis and Arabs, but you also had a good number in the congregants of West Africans, African Americans, and so on and so forth. So definitely felt that a very supportive community out there. So we addressed the parents. I want to say that, we're talking here, and as June is coming up and summer is starting, what sort of programs and activities would Hamd Institute provide in the summer? Kids are off. Some families go take off and travel, and some people are here locally, and different families have different priorities in the summer. But what are some things you do both to keep your students busy, but then also for the general community that might not be your regular students? What are some things people can look forward to?
Our HIF students, they have a 12-month calendar. So unfortunately, we don't have a 3-month summer break because Quran is such a unique thing that if you don't read it for a few weeks, you forget everything you just memorized. There has to be a system. So we do give students, we do give them off. Like we give them off in Ramadan for the last 10 days. We have a week in the winter break. We have a few days in spring, a few days in Thanksgiving, and we give them about 2 weeks in the summer. So our classes actually continue throughout the summer. We do shorten the time a little bit because now they're done with their academics, but they do come to class and we try to make it a little bit more fun. So at Hamd, inshallah, we're going to have a robotics team coming. We're going to have a PE coach coming to do some workouts with the kids, between their hifz, to kind of make it fun for them, because obviously they're taking on this task, and with society, and like we talked about distractions, maybe their friends or their siblings are not going to school, so they feel like, oh, why do I have to go? And shaitan comes in all sorts of forms. And actually, shaitan comes more to people who are memorizing the Qur'an than he does to those who are not memorizing Qur'an. So we try to do whatever we can to keep them engaged. We try to give them a shorter day on Friday so they can, have the weekend and whatnot. That's for the full-time students. And then for those who are part-time students or they just want to take advantage of their summer, we actually have a hifz intensive. So we let these students join the full-time students. We hire a few more teachers, get some more help. And students who maybe they're doing part-time, they want to move forward, they can join. Or maybe someone who wants to maybe start their journey for hifz and see how well can I do, and I want to use this period as my test period. So we also have an opportunity for them to come and join us. And aside from that, we actually have programs at Hamd for people of all ages. We have a Sira class and Sira conference coming up. We have a Tazkiyah class for adults. We have a young professionals class once a week. We have a teens halaqah on Wednesdays talking about contemporary issues once a week. So we try to make it where the community can be engaged here. Students don't have school. Maybe they're taking a break from college. So not everyone travels for the entire summer. Maybe they go for a week or two. So what do you do for the rest of the weeks? Well, if you're in the Houston area, we'd love for you to come and visit us for any of these programs that you can benefit.
But let me ask you that. That's as you're mentioning the programs, for sure you must have some students who do travel, or let's say they take off for a month to go overseas, or they do something. Do you still, even if they're not with you day to day, even if they might be gone for a month or 6 weeks, or do you still give them a regiment? Or do you just tell them to revise what they already know, or do you tell them to keep moving it forward? After someone's at a certain level, maybe they've memorized 5 juz or more, how do you deal with those sort of situations? So they don't get rusty, they don't forget, they don't get a little bit complacent.
From the front end, we're very nice, but then we have a conversation with the parents that please don't do this again until they finish. But in reality, what we try to do is we try to write down what they should be doing every day or every other day on their trip with their parents. But the reality is when students come back, they need about 2-3 weeks to kind of catch up where they were, just because they're on vacation, they may be visiting family, and they may not have enough time, so on and so forth. So we try to give them some assignment as they're gone, but for the most part, parents don't take them out for too long. They understand the seriousness of it. They understand, how important it is. It's funny you mentioned this. I had 2 students, brothers, and they had completed 10 juz. And their mom came to me and she said, I want to take them to Pakistan. I said, listen, auntie, you can take them to Pakistan, but they're going to forget. She said, don't worry, I got this. I said, okay. They came back and they basically forgot everything in 3 months. And we had to restart. Like, not restart, but we had to kind of spend 6-7 months. So after that, she said, you know what? You keep them until they become Hafiz, and I'm going to go on my own to Pakistan. They'll be with their dad here in Houston. So for the next 6 years in their journey, they never went overseas. And their mom used to go, every other year or whatever. And then once they became Hafiz, she came to me and she was like, can I take them now? And I was like, now you can take them.
You love hearing those stories, because I feel like a lot of times when you have this kid that is real serious, or they do the hifz program, you always have a story, and I'm sure you can attest to this. There's always in the background a really supportive mother or a really supportive father, or if not a combination of both. Okay, let me ask you this. Before I want to give you a chance to give some plugs and talk a little bit about current and future projects that you may be involved in. You have some amazing things nowadays all across North America and obviously the Muslim world. I know we have listeners listening in different parts of the world. We have Muslim Matters has listeners in, I think, more than 60 countries. But I think most of our listening audiences are probably North America, Europe, and a lot of the English-speaking audiences living in the Middle East and South Asia, you didn't have a lot of these opportunities 20 years, 30 years ago for first generation children that, their parents had immigrated here to the States, to Canada. When you run into people who, they weren't able to learn much Quran as kids, maybe now they're in their 30s, they're in their 40s, they maybe in their 50s. What advice do you give people who might be listening? And, maybe for them, it might be too late to memorize the whole Quran. And I'm not saying that, but it could be. Statistically, maybe it's not very probable that they'll memorize the whole Quran. But maybe they want to start from somewhere. They want to start by picking up, learning basic tajweed or even start by, getting those last 10 or 15 surahs in Jazamma or doing something. What would be a general advice you have? Does Hamd Institute ever do, kind of beginner nights for adults where those are not serious Hifz students, but people who, again, they want to, over their youth, they were not able to avail these sort of opportunities, but, they're looking for something now. And again, their 30s or 40s, maybe their 50s, or even new Muslims, people who, and I know it's a different situation, but people who maybe took Shahada, they embraced Islam late in their life. They don't have a tremendous amount of Quran memorized, but, they want to start somewhere. How do you deal with those sort of folks?
I'll answer your second question first. So yeah, alhamdulillah, we do have adult classes, and inshallah in the summer we're doing a beginner's course for anyone who just wants to learn basic how to read with proper tajweed, and inshallah it'll be every Tuesday starting in the summer. So definitely, those who are interested or in the area, they can come. But even those who are not near Hamd or they're anywhere, I think there's 4 main steps for anyone to get started with the Quran. Number 1 is finding a teacher. This is something that you cannot do alone. You need to find a teacher who can guide you, who can help you, who can listen to you. There's a lot of resources. We actually even have an online teacher, a few online teachers at Hamd that we teach students from all over United States. And so just like we do, there's a lot of organizations that have online systems if you can't go in person. But most masajid do have maktab programs or evening programs. So find a teacher, number 1. Number 2 is be consistent. If you're going to commit to 1 day a week, do 1 day a week. If you're going to commit to 5 days a week, do 5 days a week. Whatever works, you have to be consistent. Without consistency, you can never be good at something. So you have to be consistent. Number 3 is to trust the process. We discussed this earlier. Like, whoever you decide to follow, whatever program you decide to follow, whatever book you decide to follow, whatever you start, finish it. Trust the process. And in that process, you'll learn more about yourself. You'll learn your weaknesses, you'll learn your strengths, but inshallah, you'll finish and you'll get somewhere. And then last but not least, you have to understand and know that there is no age to learn the Quran. It's very beautiful. I actually have a student, I think, who's about 68 years old. And, he started with me a few years ago, and now he's reading fluently. He doesn't memorize much. He knows like maybe 10, 15 surahs, but he reads once a week. He calls me. He has his whole, system, his bookmarks, and he records the sessions, and he's learning. So I think if you follow these 4 steps, inshallah, and understand these 4 things, wherever you are, you can start, and inshallah, you'll be successful. And we make dua that Allah gives you success, and inshallah, you'll enjoy this journey of yours.
No, that's an amazing story. Wow. SubhanAllah, age 68, still continuing to study and learn. Pretty amazing. Let me ask you this, and I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. I hope if you agree, I'd love to from time to time have you back on the show and hear from you again, and definitely wish a lot of success to Hamd Institute and you and the community. But before you go, I wanted you to share with the audience maybe any projects or things that are going on, anything people can support. Before that, I want to ask you, are you still doing your Umrah groups? I know you lead a Umrah group that I see a lot of families and young people going for, and seems like from the pictures on Facebook I followed for many years, everyone seems to have a really good time. Do you still lead those groups?
Yes, alhamdulillah. We take a group in November, in Thanksgiving, and in spring break. And the most recent years, a lot of my students actually have been coming with a lot of the families. And, since we are a Qur'an school and, this whole thing, one of the most beautiful things about the Umrah group is when we have Qur'an class in the Masjid of Prophet ﷺ. It's so nice just to have students reading and just spending those moments that obviously pictures don't do justice to, right? It's just, they're very beautiful moments, they're very intimate moments that you're learning Qur'an where it all started, where it all was taught, where, it all happened. And then you get to see other shuyukh and teachers over there that you can sit with, and they give advice to the students and myself and the other teachers. And subhanAllah, it's a very beautiful thing. But yes, alhamdulillah, we take a group. So inshallah, anyone who would like to come and, be with us and this journey of Qur'an, most welcome to join us, inshallah. Inshallah, the next group will be going in November. And aside from that, the first thing is that we would definitely ask everyone in the community to keep us in your du'as. Inshallah, this is just the beginning. Obviously, we have a lot of room to grow. We have a lot to learn from. And, make dua for us, the institute, the teachers, the volunteers. A lot of people undermine the amount of work that goes on in the back end. And I think some of my volunteers work more than, like myself and the other teachers, because they're doing so much in the back end to making sure that, things are going well and everything is updated and students are learning, and subhanAllah, and make dua for our students. As they continue in this journey, there's always challenges that come through, and, they could definitely use your duas. They also have to deal with me, so they can definitely use your duas on that as well. But yeah, definitely keep them in your duas. And then, of course, those of you who would like to support, as we were talking, that, we do have students who are in need of sponsorships. We do have programs that we do for our students. We like to take them out. For Eid this year, we took them out to a squash club where they play squash with like 2-3 coaches. They had a blast, alhamdulillah. But all these things, obviously, they require an effort, and they require some funds. So anyone who would like to support our programs or support or sponsoring a student, they can go to our website, hamdinstitute.org, and support our programs, inshallah ta'ala.
Now, Hamza, before you go, and again, that's hamdinstitute.com.
.org.
Hamdinstitute.org. Hamdinstitute, one word, .org. Hamza, where can people go? Is that also where people can go to keep up with the Umrah group and some of the different things that you're doing?
Yeah, they can go to the website, or they can follow us on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Alhamdulillah, all of those are actively managed, and everything that we post on the website is posted on there as well. So most definitely, they can go anywhere any of those 4 things, and they'll find all the events that are happening, inshallah.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Hey man, it's been a real interesting hour, a lot of beneficial topics. I hope parents listening both locally in Houston, Texas, will follow the Hamd Institute and keep up with what you're doing. And I hope listeners that are outside of Houston or other parts of the country and other parts of the world benefit from some of the general points you made, both about memorizing and Islamic studies and raising their children so they can learn. With that, on behalf of, for our listeners and on behalf of the Muslim Matters team, I want to really thank you for coming out. Look forward to having you again soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair for having me. It's been an honor. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hey everyone, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and follow us online on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram on our handle Muslim Matters. And check out our site daily at muslimmatters.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.